Hi, so this is just a quick guide on how to use your microscope. So this is how you're going to get it, and basically the first step is going to take out the screws that are holding the lid down and putting in the batteries. Okay, so after you put in the batteries, you do want to turn it on just to make sure it works. When we secured this electrical contact, we used super glue, and at first it looked fine, but after we left it overnight, it degassed and it kind of got all over the place. But we tested each of them and they should work, but if the light isn't turning on, it's because of that issue. And usually you can fix it by either wiggling or turning the battery around. Okay, so now we put on the lid and we put the screws back in. Whoops, I'm a little clumsy. And when you put in the screws, it might be a little bit tight, but don't worry, you won't have to change the batteries very often. In fact, you probably won't remember the last time you changed the batteries. And also, when you put in the screws, you don't need to over tighten it because what will happen is the lid will clamp down on the knob and it might make it really hard to turn if you tighten it too much. Okay, the next step is removing the protective acrylic cover piece and removing the plastic film. And when we put this on, we want to have the microscope set to the highest magnification or the smallest lens, so that way we can accurately center it using the grid on the camera app. And then giving a good press down to make sure the device is connected to the adhesive. The easiest way to do this is not by tilting it this way because it moves a lot. The easiest way is to tilt the camera towards the lens first and then rest the rest of the phone on top of the microscope. Now when you're holding it, you want to hold the bottom part of the microscope, not this top half, because when you're moving around the slide, it'll move the two pieces relative to each other and that'll mess up the image that you're getting. And you want to change the lenses by turning it clockwise. This is the easiest way to do it. The magnification goes up each time until it goes back to the beginning. Going the other way is a lot harder. Okay, now that we have the gist in terms of how to use this microscope, let's put the slide in. And you're going to want to move around the slide until you can see something on the screen. You know, it won't be in focus, but you want to be seeing something so that way when you're moving it into focus, you can see it easily. Okay, so what I just did was get it off the highest power magnification and get it down to the 30x lens, and it just so happened to already be pretty much in focus. But one of the main things I want to show you with this is just show you what's the correct distance between the lens and the whatever you're looking at. This is the focal distance, and this is what you should be shooting for when you're trying to focus the microscope. And for the 50x lens, it's pretty much the same distance, it's just a little bit closer. So now I've switched it over to the 170x lens, and as you can see, this is how it looks, as you're focusing the image. You won't really get very much until you get pretty much at the focal distance. And you want to make small adjustments and inch, your way towards that perfect, focused image. Now the main thing I want to show you here is again, the proper distance to get a focused image. And really what you want to focus more on is the distance between the lens and whatever you're looking at. And as you can see, they're really close. They're almost touching each other. And now I'm going to change it to the 340x lens. And as you can see here, there's a little issue. The microscope is not quite aligned, and that's because there's a little give in that detent right there that holds the lens in place. And the reason why it's like that is because the spring can fold in on itself and kind of move around a little bit. It's a kind of a weird problem that I discovered. But you can actually make use of that by setting that as the center when you first align the lens and the camera, and that'll keep the lens assembly always in the same position. And so now I'm focusing the image and inching my way closer. You can, always, turn back and try to focus it again, but there's a little bit of a slop, and what that means is that when you turn back, it won't turn back immediately. And basically that slop is dependent on how much you tighten the screws on the lid. And once again, I just wanted to show you how close the lens is to the sample in order to get a focused image. And as you can see, once again, it's really, really close, but the knob turns in really small increments, so you won't have too much trouble getting it there. And when you're using this microscope, you don't want to tilt it sideways or turn it upside down. Don't treat it like an adhesive. Treat it more like a non-slip surface, because that adhesive will wear down and you don't want to drop your device. Now when you're done using the device, you don't want to remove it by pulling away using that part on the left. You want to use the base that's directly connected to the adhesive and your device. It'll wear down eventually, but we do include 2 extras. And you can cut one of them for the mount block if you're using a tablet. And pretty much every microscope will have some bubbles on it somewhere, typically along the rims or the edges. And this is due to the limitations to the equipment that we could afford. But every microscope has been tested, for its functionality. And as for that acrylic cover piece, it's primarily meant to just protect the lens arms during shipment, keep them from bending or breaking. And I did want to use it as a protective cover piece, just so you can use it, for normal use, to keep it clean and to help protect the lenses, during, when you're carrying it around, since there isn't a case yet. But what I discovered is that the adhesive on the microscope sticks really hard onto the acrylic. And the solution I found is wrapping the acrylic in a little bit of matte tape. And that'll actually reduce the adhesion just enough to where, it sticks on, but it doesn't make it impossible for it to come off. Now most of the next part will only apply if you have a device where the microscope is running into some part of it, let's say like a rim or something like that. But based on the surveys and what most people plan on using this microscope with, you won't have any issues at all. However, I would still recommend watching the next part because it does include some important tips and information in terms of how the microscope works. And now I just want to give you a quick rundown of some of the other little things that you can do to kind of customize your microscope. And so what I want to show here is basically how to use those spacers. These are water-resistant discs that will basically move the lens assembly up and let you clear any kind of features that might kind of block the lens assembly. And yeah, basically you take one of them and you put it underneath the lens assembly, and you can just store the rest of them right there. Now these spacers are provided as an option. However, I think the best way to actually raise this microscope over any features is by using another piece of adhesive, and I'll explain why that is in a little bit. Now when you put this back on, you do want to be careful about something. There's this little spring right here, and that forms a very important purpose. And if you don't push that spring into the hole in there, you could smash it up against the wall, and that would be bad. And the reason why is because as you're turning the focusing knob, it tends to move the top half relative to the bottom half. As you can see, there's a little bit of slop. But this anti-rotation spring here will make sure that the microscope returns back to the same position, so that way after you centered it, it will stay centered. If the clip is too heavy, you can loosen it up by pulling up on it gently, but the clip always needs to be set low so that way you can focus the image on the high-powered settings. And also when changing the lenses, you don't have to back the microscope back out and then refocus it. It was originally designed that way, but I found out if the clip was bent just right, you didn't have to back out and you could just switch between the lenses freely. And if you use the spacers, this is a feature that you might be losing. Also, the lens assembly might collide with the clip. But the reason why we might still use these spacers is because the further away the lens is from the camera, the size of that image decreases rapidly. And so we want the lens as close to the camera as possible, but still not, hitting anything that's on the device, like a rim or something like that. So instead of using an adhesive, which is 1.25 millimeters, we can use a spacer, which is only 0.35 millimeters. But that's only provided if you have the space for it. I know it seems like a lot, but I just want to provide you with the information. Most of you won't have to deal with any of this, and it'll just work straight out of the box. And I'm not bailing on you guys. If you have issues using it, feel free to contact me. And once again, I just want to say thank you so much for your support and for your patience.